homeless guy was trying to put a spell on me, but I think he was just waving.
The following film is intended for mature audiences and contains adult content, graphic language, graphic violence, nudity, and strong sexual content. Viewer discretion is advised. We'll leave it up to you, but you gotta know about this stuff before getting into this whole thing, you know? I mean, straight up, one guy gets his face bitten off by a raccoon, and we show it. Oh man, do we show it.
I don't need this and I don't mind. This happens to me all the time. Until tomorrow, till we forget. I live for tomorrow with no regret.
Petty officers came up to the Marine sergeant that was working at Guard Post 1 and said, "Hey, you know why they put Marines on ships?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "Sheep are too obvious." And I'm dying laughing. Again, I'm lowest ranking guy in the totem pole. Man, that Marine locked me up so quick.
Well, I'll tell you what, sense of humor.
It was funny. My dad was telling me about one time they landed in somewhere in Florida. I forget what base it was, but he was a crew chief on a refueling tanker, and he said something about everyone gets off the plane, and it was a Marine base, but there was Army people there that were there to greet them, and then they were obviously Air Force, and I think he was the second highest ranked person there as the crew chief. He was a T, what would that be in the Air Force, a T5 or something like that, base sergeant or some shit.
Sergeant.
Yeah, something along them lines. And so they're all standing there staring at each other. No one knows who's technically supposed to salute who, so they're all kind of half saluting each other and shit. And then all of a sudden, the commander of the base is walking by and goes, "Would you guys quit fucking around and start getting some goddamn work done?" And they all turned, saluted him, and in unison went, "Yes, sir!" And that shit started getting done.
Well, look, I think sense of humor... Go ahead, sir.
I had to learn everybody's ranks, being a joint task force, so my boss was a Navy commander, and so I had a Navy commander as a boss. I answered to a Marine Corps colonel, and I answered to an Army general, and
you got the full-on
major.
Pentagon Wars experience, basically.
Well, yeah, that was a task force in the embassy during Mount Pinatubo's Operation Fiery Vigil. And again, I was the lowest man on the totem pole. I mean, you had pond sewage, and then you had me. So, I tell you what, everybody could lock me up.
Well, the funny thing is that across the branches, an E3 it doesn't rank out the same in any of the branches. And some branches don't even have two levels of E1 like the Army did. You got your fuzzy and then your E1 with a bar.
Right. Right.
Or a chevron, I should say. Pardon my French.
Well, and they ended up changing that too. So you had mosquito wings. You're an E2. But back in the day, PFC had mosquito wings, back in the 60s. So, they that's changed a lot. But, yeah, I learned...
Right, now they got, three bars or three chevrons on the PFCs?
PFC,
something like that.
So it's one chevron, one rocker. PV2 is just one chevron. E1 slick collar, there's no nothing on there. Then, you had your E4, which could be a corporal, which is an NCO, or a specialist. And they did away with all the Spec 5 and above. So once you go above E4, it's your sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, master sergeant, sergeant major. I retired out sergeant first class. So
okay. How long were you actually in for, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was in 16 years, and I had some kidney issues, and they forced me to retire early.
I said, another 4 years? You could have tested out and been a warrant officer, couldn't you?
Well, I was actually had my college degree, I could have just been direct commissioned as an officer. But I had the opportunity to go to warrant, and I actually passed it up. But then I also did, in Hawaii, when I was stationed there, I was doing night land navigation. If you ever see jokes about lieutenants and not following them in land navigation, I followed a second lieutenant in night land nav, and I walked my ass right off a cliff and jacked up my knees.
Oh.
Okay, they called it flying Hawaiian. So when they say don't follow lieutenants, there is some words of wisdom there.
All right, I've just got to say this right now. Seriously, that's what I was going to say earlier. Sense of humor is born out of the fear of tragedy. So, in your case, true tragedy. and I say fear of tragedy and not tragedy, just simply because sometimes fear is enough to, yeah.
Well, there's two forms of lost in the military. You have lost, and then you have lieutenant lost.
Oh God! Well, so those warrant officers are no joke. Some of them guys have been in for like 25 years. I was on the phone with a buddy of mine. He was stationed at Fort Benning, and he was they were on Exodus or some shit, and he was just hanging out, fucking off or whatever, and he's like, "Oh boy, this is how I get interesting." And I'm getting a play-by-play from this fucker now, and I'm like, "What?" He goes. So the first lieutenant's yelling at a warrant officer, and I forget what class of warrant officer it was, but the dude was up there, and all you hear is, "You can get fucked," and he's like, "Oh shit." Like, you heard the guy yell that over the phone, and I'm like, "Which one was that?" And he goes, "Take a guess." I said, "Is the lieutenant shitting himself?" And he goes, "No, but I think he peed a little."
Well, I didn't even, I'd already been in my first duty station about a year, and our S3, which is the crypto guys, or S2, I'm sorry. He was Chief Warrant Officer 3, and I watched him rip our battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel, just tore him to shreds in the hallway. And I went and asked my sergeant. I thought, "What the heck's going on, man?" Because the battalion commander, he's over the whole battalion. And my sergeant said, and this time we only went up to Chief Warrant Officer 4. So he said, "Let me explain how the warrant works." He said a warrant 1 is just a peon. A warrant 2 is the man that talks to the man that talks to God. A Chief Warrant Officer 3 is the man that talks to God. And a Chief Warrant Officer 4
is God.
Is God.
Yeah.
And I ran into this guy years later. We'd already, a different unit. I happened to run into him in Japan, and they just introduced the Chief Warrant Officer 5. And I said, "So, what's Chief Warrant Officer 5? He goes, "That's the man that gives God orders."
I love it.
I didn't even realize it till we were in Korea, and this is in, I want to say 93. I was with the artillery unit. I'm over in Korea, and I'm on the bus, and I take it back. It was in 2001. It was about a month before 9/11, and I'm in Korea, and I get on the bus, and I'm sitting next to Lieutenant Colonel. He's the battalion commander for the 201st Aviation Battalion. They're all Apache drivers, and he goes, "Man, this is the dangest thing. My Chief Warrant Officer 3 got to ride in with all the flag officers, and I got to ride in here with the enlisted, or senior enlisted." And I did not realize how much power Chief Warrant Officer 3 really has until that moment. I mean, he's riding with colonels and generals. So those of you who don't know what a flag officer is.
Yeah.
So it's just full bird colonel, or in case of the Navy, a captain, and above.
Yeah.
And here's a Chief Warrant Officer 3 riding with those guys in, like, you know, limousines. And here's this lieutenant colonel, who's his boss, having to ride with us, you know, in the bus.
No, he's only his boss on paper, is how my buddy explained it to me. He's like that guy can only tell him what to do on paper. Realistically, they need to salute the warrant officer because he could tell them to get fucked any day of the week.
Oh yeah, yes he can.
And they are not afraid to do so.
No, they are not. They are not.
Well, I'll tell you what, buddy.
My cousin was a senior chief in the Navy, and Master Chief, and he took, instead of his next promotion, he went warrant, and he retired out, and I think he's still teaching in Pensacola. But yeah, he went warrant instead of going to E9. So yeah, that's
Well, I'll tell you what, buddy.
Those guys got some power.
Right, well, and that's... Go ahead, Breezy.
Well, we're just creeping up on around an hour. The thing is there anybody... you want to shout out WD and stuff like that? Maybe... anything else you want to talk about for a couple seconds here?
I want to shout out to a few guys that have been out for a while. Perry and Amrico. They were some of the first guys I met. Breeze is actually the second person in WD that I met.
I'm 2 for 2 with good people so far, you and Mama. So.
And I was the third person brought into WD. But you know, Mama's done an excellent job, outstanding job running the squadron, and we've had some really good people. Natasha, UK Dave, you know, just really putting some stuff, you know, putting a lot of effort into the squadron. I really appreciate all they've done. I mean, WD was my second squadron. I was in Serenity, was my first, and I was there for 2 wars, and then they just kind of abandoned ship. So
I was with the old USN for the longest time, the original USN, United States Navy.
I remember that, and I actually flew against you a few times, and you know, I've got the parts of my plane removed permanently multiple times. You know.
I get lucky sometimes.
I was going to say, I can remember you being around back when we used to battle it out.
Yeah. Flying and dying, as T-Mac would say.
I think I'm the only Surfratt that's ever been on here.
I haven't seen a single copycat.
So yeah, that's the only. Yeah, it'd be the only one because it was the same. We've been WD.
Well, I got Surfratt 2 and SFC Surfratt are both mine. So, yeah, I think I'm it.
You know, I can honestly say I think I've had 2 copycats that I know of, and I always got a kick out of it. I always thought, okay, that's weird.
I remember that when I first joined the squad, there was another Breeze out there.
Oh, that Breeze, Breezy 89 is awesome. To be clear.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
Breezy 89.
But
I remember him.
There was two other cool Breezes, believe it or not.
I don't think there's been another Kegs.
No, I don't think there's been another Kegs either.
I don't
There
think
was
so
a
either.
Six, but he changed his name to Goat Balls.
Goat Balls.
That he was the whole squadron he was in started getting on him like there's already a big six. And he changed his name, and he changed his name to Goat Balls. That's how he is. His name's still Goat Balls.
It would have been funnier if he would have done Goat Ball 6, but hey.
Yeah.
Have some imagination. You're already screwed.
Well, the funny thing is, so Dookie, when you were in the hospital, I changed my name and did a war in honor, you know, to show support with everyone else. I haven't had the diamonds to change it back. So if anyone wants to find my ass in game, it's not my usual kegs. It's Keg Dookie 6.
Yeah, he's not dead. Just dead inside.
There's all sorts of people doing that. I was like, look at all these sixes. Like something this six is I don't know. It's a bunch of people. I was flattered.
No, then Champs was what? Dr. Duke 6?
Huh?
As long as it's not deep 6, right?
Right. Everybody, a lot of people always ask me, how'd you get that? How'd you come up with that name? Oh, it's pretty easy. I like to smell a napalm in the morning. And usually they get on that, otherwise I'm old. I have to explain it to them.
Apocalypse Now, for all you kids wondering what the fuck he's talking about. So go learn something, people. Go watch that movie.
Was head of the first cav, first of the first Air Cavalry.
Yep.
They took the
There
big
you go.
No, these young kids need to seriously go do a little bit of learning about Apocalypse Now. That's
Don't be making fun of me.
well, hey, if you haven't seen it, of all people, I'd be disappointed. But I'm sure
Were
you've.
you ever in first cav?
No, I wasn't. I
Okay,
never
so
was.
you didn't wear the cowboy hat.
Knees out. I blew my knees out and stuff, and they wouldn't take me. So, but my dad and my granddad trained me for stuff like that ever since I was a kid. So, I just started studying military stuff back when I was younger, and I never stopped. I can draw Alexander the Great's battle plans at Gargamel on the ground in the dirt for you. I can do some of Robert E. Lee's, Hannibal, Antonius Publius Cornelius, Scipio Africanus, all these, at the Battle of Zama, I could draw all these battle formations and battles on the ground, and which is where I learned them mostly was I was drawing them in the dirt as I was studying them. Finally took it to paper.
Let me recommend a book to you.
Okay.
The Tunnels of Chin-Shi.
Tunnels of Chin-Shi?
Yep, Tunnels of
Yeah, I'm going to
Chin-Shi.
check that out.
I did a counterinsurgency training in 25th ID, and that was like the main theme of the training. We learned tunnel rats and all that stuff, and actually did some real hardcore training for a few days, man. A lot of people came out with a lot of injuries, and I inflicted a lot of those. But, I'm 6'5". I was 261 pounds, and I was pressing near 400 pounds on a bench.
I'm 6'4", 6'5", and now I'm 300 pounds. But I was.
Yeah, I am too.
But back then I was like 280, and I was running 4.7, 4.6 40s, and coming out of high school before I blew my knee out. Then and I could squat house. I could bench press up around 350 back then, and 400. And I was just big. I was called pulpwood strong. I did a lot of pulpwood stuff out in the country back in the day, but I was luckily got to play with a group of these guys over here near my house that had just a club that paintball. And a buddy of mine was a member. He got me in there as a guest one day, on a one-time, game with them, one day. And all these guys were either ex-military or they were still active somehow, because they would disappear and then come back. But all these guys were ex-military, and all of them were, there were some Rangers, there were the Special Forces guys, there was all sorts that were in this group. And they come from all over the paintball. They had these turned up paintballs. And here I am, sitting there with them, and they said, "You bring anything to wear?" I broke out one of my ghillie suits. Oh, okay, good. And I had fun, but they respected me at the end there when we got done. They chased me around for about an hour. And Morph, the game of Morph, everybody, when you got shot, you had to go to the other team where they just shot each other. They were chasing me, and I kept laying that high, and they passed by me, and I'd go the other way. I never could get any kind of anything offensive on them, because they were just too good at what they were doing as far as spreading out, covering, and I messed up and went in this old little fort thing, and they hemmed me up and finally got me. But they were getting mad. I was in there cussing. How's he hiding like this? Where's he at? They were standing on top of me. I was looking at them. They said, "You know what you're doing, don't you?" I said, "Well, that's most of my life in the woods. So I know y'all trained for it, but
this is kind of where I live." And what most people don't know, most people don't know that, you know, snipers came from the South.
I never told you about the two Army guys that come and questioned me at school one day. That's crazy. That's a story from another time. It's a long story. So
actually, if you've still got time, Surf, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, I'll have to edit this a little bit, but not very much, and it'll be fine though. If you want to keep going.
I do want to.
Go ahead.
I do want to tell you, I was talking to this Vietnam vet. He was Special Forces. We're at the VA Medical Center up in Salt Lake, and we're sitting down, you know, and he's just kind of going under. I was still in the Guard. I hadn't retired yet, and I just happened to be up there for some medical issues. And this guy's telling me, he said, "You want to know who the baddest people I ever fought with were?" And you know, he's wearing his old Army jacket, and dude was with Special Forces in Vietnam. You know, he's got the Special Forces combat patch and all that stuff. And he said, "I had a 19-year-old girl from the Israeli Army. She ran our entire platoon into the ground."
Yep.
He said, "We followed her for 2 miles once we landed on a jump. And she's sitting there waiting for us to catch up to her. And she said, 'You lazy people ready yet?' And she took off." And he said that 19-year-old girl from the Israeli Army ran an entire Special Forces platoon into the dirt. He said she ran circles around every one of us.
Well, and
he said that was no joke.
Well, in the Israeli, you know, it's a culture. You know, service is a culture there too. And the thing is too, you know, it could be down to even just the individual too. I mean, how many? I'm sure there's more out there, many more, but not just the Israelis, but you know, but yeah, it could have been the person
you know,
too.
Dick's talking about growing up in the woods and going up against all these Special Forces guys.
Yeah.
But man, you're in your own backyard. You're in your own element.
Yeah.
You know, man, those SF guys, they're coming from the city. You know, they're coming from all different walks of life. But and you got a whole lifetime on them.
And that's exactly why sniping was developed in the South, is because of hunting, stalking, really, at the base of it. You know, that's where recon and everything happens underneath a ghillie suit or leaf suit.
Yeah, I was taught, you know, to live off the land, how to track, how to, you know, cover my tracks. And then when I scored the top 1% in the nation on ASVAB, I had every branch want me. Before I blew my knee out, I could have went to West Point. I could have went to Naval Academy. I had senatorial backing for those, and but it was all dull and void once I blew my knee out. But these two Army guys come in, and they were different. Now that I think about it, I think there was some type of intel, something, because they were in plain clothes, suits, but they weren't, you know, they weren't like CIA. They were armed. They were Army, but they come to my school. They come to my school and interviewed me. Told my principal they needed a room. And
so we had guys, you know, Delta Force does a lot of recruiting, and they recruit from the Special Forces a lot of the time. And you'd see guys with long hair and earrings, you know, wearing uniforms, and you know those guys are Delta Force. But a lot of the guys, so a lot of the recruiters that you'll see in plain clothes, when I was interviewed for White House Communications, all the NCOs that interviewed me were all in plain clothes. None of them were wearing uniforms. But military intelligence, more than likely, if you scored that high, those are military school, and they will come in plain clothes to interview you.
And they were asking some weird questions, and I only got a facial expression off of them. Well, at one dude, I'd be damned twice out of him, and the other one just kind of a facial expression, like it changed, like he was surprised. And they were asking questions like crazy, like what I had for breakfast, then what would I do with how would I perform a shot at, say, 500 yards doing this, from windage like this. And then, but one of their first ones was, if I knew what a ghillie suit was. I said, yeah. I got the last one I made in the car, and out in the parking lot, you don't see it? And I heard the one dude say under his breath, bullshit. Oh, I said, yeah, let me see it. I went out there to the car, got it, come back in. Here's my hands on my ghillie suit. At once said, I'll be damned. And I started looking at it. You made this? I said, yeah. And they were like looking at each other. They kept on with the questions. Then they got to like, did I think I could make a shot at, say, 800 yards? I said, yeah. I got a target in the car from last weekend at my uncle's house while I was shooting 1,000 yards with an improved 30-06 on a human silhouette. I got a target in the car. You don't see it? And they said bullshit again. I went out to the car again. Come out with the target and handed it to them. And they were looking at the target, and they were looking at me, and they were looking back at the target. And one dude was shaking his head. I'd be damn. And they went on with the question, but they figured who had me out. Just by this crazy questioning, about an hour's worth of questioning that just one question had nothing to do with the next question, but they figured that the only things I would probably hesitate on if I had to do like a sniper situation, had to take something out, the only thing I'd hesitate on was a dog. And they were right, because that's about the only thing I would have hesitated on was a dog. If I was having, anything else I was good with. They said I wasn't a robot, said I wasn't...
You're capable of being everything but a sociopath.
Yeah.
To me,
I was kind of in their wheelhouse, basically, of what they were looking for, except for a dog, which they laughed.
You genuinely have a certain set of skills.
Sounds like one of the organizations that I don't dare name was interviewing you. Because those are psychological questions, and the patterns that they ask them, they're asked in that order for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's to get a knee-jerk response.
Yeah, there's a whole matrix of things, really. But see, I have a psychology background, sort of. So, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know, guys. Like, fucking my ghillie suit is about 3 feet away from me right now. Actually, my leaf suit, it's handmade. So.
What? Mine's 2 feet away from me.
Yeah, no, I'm dead serious. So I have like this rack.
Well,
so that's why we found each other. And then here comes Kegs.
Well, I'm not as big as Surf and Dookie. I'm only like 5'10", 5'11", pushing 260. But I got one ghillie suit out folded up underneath my back seat of my pickup. I got another one in the closet back home. And then I got my 20 gauge, one of my rifles, and one of my pistols also in my truck. And then the old lady's got her pistol. And these are all like things that are like lock loaded, ready to rock and roll. Because concealed weapons permit, I'm allowed to do that. So
we don't require those here in Utah. I can just carry concealed with or without a permit.
Yes, sir.
So Utah was one of the ones that went to a constitutional carry state, which I'm hoping the rest of the fucking country fucking pulls their heads out of
Missouri
their
is as well, as far
as
as
does it.
Yeah, and the thing is America.
I'm gonna start carrying my 5-foot broadsword on my back.
See, when I was in the military, when I was in the 25th ID, I didn't really need a ghillie suit, and when I was at Corps Artillery, man, if I'm shooting you, you don't know where I am or how far away I am, because being field artillery, we kind of reach out and touch people.
Yeah.
So that was like the personification of fuck around and find out.
Yeah, a little bit of big brain there too to go artillery.
Have you ever seen the picture of the sniper versus the machine gunner versus infantry on their targets?
No.
the patterns on the targets, and then you have field artillery. It's just to whom it may concern. And as they keep blast, everything is gone.
Yeah, I was like, I'll delete everything.
Right, that's like the sergeant says, the enemy is in the westerly direction. And you're like, copy, you're removing the west.
Well, you see, the position I was at, so my last overseas assignment was I was working in theater operations. And so when I did a move on the chart, I didn't move, a platoon or a battalion. I moved an entire division or several brigades. And when we put out targets, at our level where we were at, when we put out targets, you're wiping out about 30 miles by 100-mile sector, and you're working with Air Force and planning these strikes, and you're moving, you're removing cities, you're removing, so that's kind of the scale that I was working at. I'm trained to aim, to call in fire on firing, on targets for artillery. But where I actually worked was I call in the targets to, say, a MRS brigade.
Yeah.
And those guys eliminate it off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
With their rockets.
Well, and
right, you're asking them to make you a parking lot.
Basically, the meme of this would be Full Metal Jacket, the scene, where they can't find the sniper, and they use the tank. So that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I guess that would be the watch target. Maybe that was Saving Private Ryan, something like that. But yeah, it's.
Well,
yeah.
I actually did get to fire an artillery round, and it happened to be Willie P, or we call it Shake and Bake. And I fired that thing out of a 106 Toad, or 106 self-propelled, and I jumped out of the track and watched my round hit 22 miles away. And it looked like a mushroom cloud. And we're getting rid of all this white phosphorus ordnance because it expired, so we had to burn it off. And I tell you what, man, firing off around is shake and bake. That's something. that was, dude, you kind of get a hard on once you pull that lanyard, and that breeze comes back, and you're like, whoa, and you jump out of that track and watch your round hit. Oh, man. Dude, there ain't nothing like firing that artillery round.
Well, Habitual Linecrosser, you'd like him, because in one of his skits, there was something about when someone says, there's a problem that way, you just eliminate that way.
What that was, I can tell you exactly what that one was. That was F-15 teaching, trying to teach the F-22 how to gate a radar and come in and hit a radar station.
Okay, that's right.
F-15 had to go in and come in low and roll over and trick it and get on the ground, like it's part of the ground, come up, fire missile, roll out.
That's right. Yeah. And
F-22's like,
what?
I got a question. He said, you got a question? F-22's like, I got one question. What if they can't pick me up on radar because I'm stealth? And he'll say like, you kids that use your toys, just only blow the thing up. And then that's when a B1 pops up. It says, oh, or you can just, if they point that way, just delete that way. That was
You would really like this guy, buddy. And yeah, like his fans get they'll send him gifts to a PO box, and a lot of times it's Navy guys even trolling him. That's how just he's just funny. He's a really nice guy, but super genius, and then funny as hell too. So he's winning.
Well, I was supposed to actually go to Nellis Air Force Base to do air targeting, with aircraft, calling in airstrikes. And one of my best friends actually he went, and I had already been forced to retire, so he told me about the course. But could have been there for that.
Well, I can tell you
Oh,
what.
actually, guys, here's some news coming up here soon. I'm gonna still try and be on when I'm up over there. I'm gonna be over there for like 2 weeks, but I think I'm going to Germany.
Really?
For
Okay.
I'm just kind of work, but it's at some military base over there. Some type of simulator being installed, and a buddy of mine has a contract on them, and he's wanting me to go. So,
Well, if you,
That's cool.
yeah, keep me updated too, because I wonder if you can get on Discord
Okay.
over there still.
well, his last ones he installed was some spooky or Spectre gunship simulators. I can't remember where it was somewhere out west. He installed 2 of those.
Creech Air Force Base. In
That sounds familiar. I think that was it.
Yeah, my brother does all the security systems on those. So yeah, he was not military. He's an electrical contractor, but he installs all their electrical. And I know exactly where it was he did it because I did all the rebar on those facilities out of Creech.
Really?
So yeah.
Well, so Duke
That's
is
all right.
actually, yeah, Duke's an electrician. So,
Yeah, I'm actually electrical. I have my own electrical company, but I do a lot of installations with him, and he does those for military, and then he does these cranes for like factories that are overhead cranes, but they're the smaller ones that you pull by hand, but they operate up and down. But and,
The
he does-
gantries.
yeah, and then he's just does custom homes here. I live on the Gulf Coast of Alabama, and he does custom homes here and stuff like that's what he does when he's home. And he don't want to take his crews from down here that's doing these homes, so he's wanting to ask me because I went with him a couple times in state, and I told him, yeah, I'd go to Germany in a heartbeat. And never been there. I always wanted to go at least to Europe once. So
Yeah, my brother's an electrical contractor in Vegas, and he does all low voltage stuff. Right now, he's doing all of Elon Musk's facilities around the world. And my youngest brother just went to work for him.
for the hyperrail thing or whatever.
No, just like the alarm system, all the low voltage stuff.
Yeah.
Dick knows what I'm talking about.
oh yeah,
And he's wanting me to go to work for him as an estimator. I've been a rebar estimator for 25 plus years. I'm burnt out on rebar, but
well, that would probably would like doing that estimating on that low voltage stuff. It's not really that bad, but it's a lot of different things to look at, and
yeah.
but it's really familiarize yourself with. It's easier for an estimator to jump into estimating on another thing like that than it is, say, sometimes even an electrician becoming an estimator. It's just
Yeah,
I don't know.
See, my dad's retired IBEW electrician. My grandpa was retired IBEW electrician.
Yeah.
I was an electrician before I joined the Army, and when I got out, I tried to, I was in the National Guard, so I tried to get a job as an electrician here in Utah, where I transferred to. They said, "Oh yeah, I'll pay you $5.50 an hour." It's like less than half of what I was making before I went in. I was like, forget it. I ended up becoming a plumber, and got in a bad car wreck, go back to school, study architecture, and end up in the rebar industry as a detailer and eventually an estimator. And I kind of been doing that ever since. So
Yeah, I've been all over the country. I've done heavy industrial. I've done a couple military installations. One of them, they bust us in. I can only tell you that I think I was in Virginia somewhere, and I had to walk around.
I know where it's at.
And I had a full-bird. That place head of security there was a full-bird colonel of special forces, and he used to, I can't remember his name to save my life. I'm bad with names, but I had these 2 guys that had to walk around with me with guns, and one of them was this little young kid, red-headed kid from Cleveland. I remember that. And that colonel would bring me coffee in the mornings. I was superintendent. He'd bring me coffee, and he'd start ribbing this boy about how that boy one time told me how bad his digital camouflage was he had on. And I smirked and said, I got some camouflage I make at the house. I'll smoke it. And that that colonel come around there and pump that boy up every day. I told that colonel one day, I said, I'm going to have to kill that boy one day. I said, look at him. He's trying to be red. He's mad as a, he is mad. He can't say a word because you're over here just poking him like a, I said, quit pumping him up. I don't want to fry him one day. And, that boy finally calmed down and realized that he was just being tested. I really had fun there. I just had no clue where I was at. They brought in food and everything. We stayed right there on site for a month, and then they shipped us out.
Yeah. I know exactly where you was at. That's classified.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say anyway. Like I said, it's not an accident that I'm on a list, you're on a list, and you're probably being listened for and on a list by now.
Let me just tell you. Delta Force. I'm not going to tell you anything else.
All I'm going to say is that I like bacon, and I'm sorry, Jesus, people, we are good, honest Americans, and yeah. No, I'm just fucking around. But
my brother's been working out in Area 51, man.
Well, it's like there. I'm just big into Mac Bolan Executioner books by Don Pendleton. He's got there's like 700 books out now, but I used to have, I still do. I have like 500 books. But I had been reading them at the time, and I was sitting at this place. I said, this is the closest thing I've ever seen to Stony Man in this book, as far as ways that, I said, anybody want to try this place? They're crazy. I thought I'd seen some places that were, had security, but no. This place here, it was some bad things pop up out the ground that would get you around this place. And
that's why Dugway Proving Grounds. You can. I was out there doing surveying some retrans shots for Camo, and we were in a kind of broke down in one area. All of a sudden, this vehicle pops up out of the ground, out of the middle of nowhere, and they're like, "Why'd you stop?"
Well, Kegs and I just had on his buddy.
It's no joke out there.
Well, Bill Mongo, Mongus, whatever. What was his story, Kegs? He basically drove 300 miles to deliver an envelope, basically under guard.
Yeah, that one was he got sent out to this location, backed into a loading dock. A couple of SUVs were put on his deck. Within like 5 minutes, they were like, all right, drive to this address. Don't stop for anything but fuel if you need it. And like someone followed him the whole way there, backed in. They took the shit off. He saw him grab an envelope out of one of the trucks, and then they drove the cars away. And the rest of the people in the building, then they're like, all right, get the fuck out of here. Everybody was armed. Everyone was wearing suits.
So that's intel. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's intel, but intel to who and why, and it's just really weird how they delivered it.
I learned a long time ago, because I've had courier orders going into Korea and into the Philippines, and some of the stuff I knew what I was carrying, other stuff I didn't know what I was carrying, and I didn't want to know what I was carrying.
Yeah.
All I knew is I had to protect it with every inch of my life, and I had diplomatic immunity in both those countries while I had that stuff on my person.
Well, I just found out something about myself. I kind of really enjoy the idea of kind of the cat and mouse game of, the reasons why we have to deliver intelligence this way. I just found something out about myself.
A lot of times it's a bologna sandwich to somebody, you just never know, but I understand the reasons for a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the media alone and what you see on the web. I mean, you look at these guys, Chelsea Manning and some of these other guys that got information and went and spread it out to the world, and sometimes...
Well, let me ask you something, since you're not only, familiar with this kind of stuff, but let's say just in a personal view only. Like, what do you think about Snowden, though, considering what he did expose?
I have mixed feelings on that.
Yeah, okay? I think I do too.
And he, I don't agree with how he did it.
Well, I think he thought he was going to be dead well before he could vet what.
No, he wouldn't have. There's several places that you can go inside that community that he would have been safe, and he would if he had done it the right way, and he didn't. I mean, there's ways to get it to do it right, and there's ways to totally do it wrong. He made himself a target by doing it the way he did. I don't care whatever your reason is, whatever, or why you think, or who you think you're helping, but by doing it that way, you actually dissolve the trust of the American people. Whether the trust needs to be there or not, when the American people need to trust their government, they're not going to now. And so you've ruined that trust with their government. I mean, like I said, I've seen stuff that I can't talk about that would totally blow the trust of the American people. But on the flip side of that, I've seen stuff that, boy, if the American people knew what the country did for them, and the fact that they're still speaking English right now is amazing. There's a lot of stuff that the general public doesn't find out about, but they're breathing another day because of that secretive stuff that the uniformed services did, or those guys in the CIA, NSA. You can't even, I can't even begin to tell you how many times that I know of that we've avoided being attacked in the U.S. So it's, and that's just with my limited knowledge. So we need to be able to trust our government, and when our government's failing us, and there's scandal and things like we're seeing today.
So at least inside the let's say the corporation of the military, if you would call it that. So the everything combined. Do you really think in this case, especially still for America right now, do you think the means are justified by the end, or because I can understand abstractly what you're saying.
In my opinion, the military is always going to have our back.
Yes,
100%. When it comes down to it, the military's got our back.
Well, it's self-interest, right? It would be self-interest, lions for lambs, and there is a point where a lion becomes self-aware. I'm just saying, especially with kind of the stuff that's coming out about stuff like the FBI and stuff like that. Sorry to even name drop that, but it is what it is.
I'm going to tell you though. I understand where you're going with that. But the military, people that join the military, it's a volunteer service. You're not being drafted. And I honestly believe deep in my heart that those that are joining to serve their country in the military are joining for the most part for the right reasons, because they love our country and because they are willing to write that check that nobody else is willing to, and put their life on the line.
Well, and that
they're willing to jump in front of that.
Yeah,
board.
that brings me back to Snowden. You said you had mixed feelings, right? So, considering what came
Snowden
out,
wasn't in the military; he was a contractor.
Well, but I think he would agree with your viewpoint, though. And obviously, he could have went military and done anything he wanted, really.
Yeah,
I mean, he was in the Army, actually. I think he
blew up. He was. He was for a short period.
But he blew out his knee, and it just turned out that his brain was useful. And again, there's a wide range of why he was accepted to be even in the same room as some of these people. So, there's some moral and ethical already, issues or arguments that could be made there. But do you think that it was just a bad lapse in judgment, or do you think that he made a good call at the end of the day? Not necessarily that he did it, or how? But do you think at the end of the day, do you think his?
I think that needed to be exposed. I just think he made a bad call on how he did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so from sitting back and listening for a minute, and this is I guess you could call it a worldwide observation that's been made. Would you agree that a bigger part of why we've never been invaded would be from the worlds of the World War II General Yamato, I believe his name was? Driving force behind the U.S. never being invaded on its mainland being the people of the U.S.
Yeah, and definitely, I can't wait to hear your answer. Go ahead, sir.
That's exactly. It's still the reason why we've never been invaded.
That and logistics and really, truthfully, on paper, even up until now, we're still basically, now that Russia's kind of thought, we're still basically the only superpower. We're the only country that can actually. We have away bases. We have bases everywhere. We have Navy sitting off the coast of this, off the coast of that. We have military installations all over the world where we can use as a forward base if we needed to for anything. And no other country can do that. They have to actually gear up, and most countries don't have the logistics. They don't have the equipment to move in of that to invade us.
No, you're 100% right. We are literally the most powerful nation in the world, and we have the most powerful civilians in the world. There's no other country where if you were to attack that country, where the civilian population would literally pull together with their own arms and hold off a army.
Well, and if I remember right, that I read this a while ago, but I want to say just the American populace, the civilian populace, not even taking into account any post-military veterans or any of that, but just its civilian populace had more access and weapons and ammunition and personnel than 90% of the world's standing armies.
Yeah, I read a book from a KGB agent who had infiltrated the U.S. back in the 70s and 60s, and actually a guy one of the guys I paintball with handed me the book to read, and I read this book, and he was talking in depth about how he was all against trying to invade the U.S. Do not ever try. He said the Cuba thing was stupid. He said you can't come into Canada. You can't on the West Coast. You've got the Rockies. It's going to smash you before you get smashed by the civilian population. East Coast is there's just no way really. He said that through the South you would get about halfway up through Florida, and once you got to the panhandle of Florida, any army would be turned back because there would be a wall of crazed civilians from third world countries with so many guns, and you'd be hearing, like he was saying, he'd be hearing these rebel yells again and stuff like that, and he said no, it just wouldn't work out. He was afraid. He said no.
Not to mention the alligators down there.
Well, not to mention the NASCARs in general.
Well, and most of us civilians here in the U.S. have access to better arms, armor, and armament than are in any third world country.
He said the South was like was the most armed third world country he had ever seen in his life. He said he could pick the three most armed third world countries he knew of, combined them, they still didn't have the armament. The southern, especially southern people, what they call rednecks, and rednecks are everywhere. And then, it's like everyone up there that like you, Kegs, that has guns. You may. Hell, even the gangsters in these cities without.
Well, shout out to Snake Eyes, by the way. Don't come kill me.
Well, and I can go to the store. I can get an AR-15 5.56 by 45 NATO. I can get an AK-47 7.62 by 39 NATO. I can go get whatever I want. I can get a Class 2 weapons license from the feds. I can run all my shit suppressed. I can go get a suppressor for my 308. I can go get a suppressor for my 243. I can literally set up a perfect system, and I can go into any store without a weapons license and purchase full-on tack gear. I can have plates, armor plates. Type 3 plates.
Yeah.
I got 15 sniper points just in the town I live in already located.
Well,
I can set up for counterattack.
That's like me. And I would break out. I've even got enough built up munitions for all my weapons, even my Dragonov.
But we got in my town here, half of us are retired military. So
Well, the reason I haven't said a word in a minute is just simply because I'm outclassed. I have an escape plan, sort of, that involves a chilly wet towel and a leaf suit.
You talked earlier about your family, how y'all gather together and go shooting.
Yep.
Me and my dad, that's all we did. My ex-brother-in-law, the one I was talking about, was in the military. He was in the military. The first time he went to my dad's, he was shooting a 308. He'd never shot a big caliber rifle like that with a scope. And first shot, it tattooed his eye and split his eye right there.
Yep, that'll happen.
I'm sewing up. I got some fishing line right here and a needle. Freaked him out. I had a butterfly. And he said, come back home and tell everybody, man, it's crazy up there. He said, all GW does with my dad is he runs in there. Well, he'll be listening to Freebird, watching the Freebird movie. And then when he gets bored, he'll come outside. Hey, let's shoot some guns. And sets up. We all start shooting guns. And he goes back in and listens to Freebird some more. and back and forth. It just freaked him out. He said he's never seen anybody just shooting guns all the time. I said, that's what we used to do. I said, he would have competitions with me growing up who could take the bottle cap off the Coke bottle, or the whatever bottle 75 yards down range and have to find almost look like you spin the cap off,
That was what I was telling Kegs.
Was shooting with him every day.
I had a buddy with a scopeless, dude, open sight, moseying a gaunt, like from 30 feet-ish. He would shoot through the center of a quarter. And that Mosey was my favorite gun I've ever had, by the way. Good job, Czechs. It was Czechla, it was Czechoslovakian.
That's like when I'm sighting my guns, I have thumbtacks set up at 100 yards. And I'll drive the top set with my 17. I'll drive the middle set with my alt 6, and then the bottom set I usually drive with my 45-70.
See, and the thing is that shit's real. Like my best friend, literally, he's Southern Missouri, but he's that redneck. Like for real, I grew up in dirt road towns, and there's some guys out there that I'm scared of to this day. And luckily, one of them was nearly my father-in-law. So that's who gave me most of my woods experience, that's for sure. Understanding a leaf shoot's a lot different than what most people think.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I can be on here another 10 hours with y'all because this has been great.
It's not a problem at all.
The CEO is waving at me to get
Well, I'm not going to lie to you, buddy. You've been the longest one we've ever done. That's why I had to stop the file. And you can add another 20 minutes on top of what I tell you before, but I'm going to have to cut this down. It's going to be trouble to cut this down to 2 hours probably. So 2 episodes.
Yeah, there we go.
But
I'm down for it, man.
Well, in all seriousness, and I'll make I'll make everybody aware that it's cut down for time. But yeah, in all seriousness, thank you for coming on, bud. Especially with where you're at and how long you stayed with us. But I guess with that being,
I really enjoyed
I got all my grandkids running around my truck right now playing tag.
Well, dude, it's an honor from each and every one of us, dude. Or Cakes.
What's that?
Basically, he has to jump off here. So, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk all this stuff with you. I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I can't wait to do it again. I've had a blast.
I was going to say, what about you, Duke?
I have too. I love that war stuff. So, yeah, count me in on some of that stuff because I do a lot of war history stuff myself. So, on certain battles. So, I think that'd be a fun one to cover.
Well, definitely hit us up, man. You can DM me suggestions, and I can throw them to Duke, or maybe you can hook each other up. Yeah, just friend each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really been an honor to have you on.
All my contact info, so.
Absolutely, guys, and I'll give it to him too. I'll give it to him right now, actually. But long and short, you know, you said to me, you know, you weren't sure you were an interesting person. Well, I disagree, and I'm sure everybody else will.
Well, appreciate you guys having me on here.
No, it's no worries, man. Not at all. But yeah, with that being said,
He's Big Duke 6.
He's cool.
and he's Kegs.
And we're to fuck out.
Always there, slipping